The city lights faded in the rearview mirror, and their dimming brought no regret, no nostalgia. Only a feeling of light, yet steady, liberation. Emily, a 30-year-old architect who had spent the last 5 years trapped in a constant cycle of deadlines, phone calls, and endless negotiations, finally felt an invisible but heavy burden lift from her shoulders. Her life had become a never-ending marathon where every step was measured and every decision dictated by logic, not by heart. She'd achieved success, her own apartment in the city center, a prestigious job, a circle of right acquaintances. But instead of fulfillment, she felt only an emptiness that grew larger with each passing day. Lately, even sleep offered no real rest. Nightmares of missed deadlines haunted her, and morning greeted her with a feeling of exhaustion even before she'd begun. Her relationship with Ryan, her boyfriend of 3 years, had devolved into a comfortable but lifeless formality. They dined at the same restaurants, discussed the same topics, and even their intimacy had become mechanical, devoid of any spark. Emily felt her own sensuality, once so vibrant and full of desires, fading, suffocated by the concrete and glass of the metropolis. The idea of escaping came to her spontaneously, like a flash of light in the twilight of her routine. She saw an advertisement for a small cabin rental lost somewhere deep in the Appalachian Mountains. No cell service, just nature. It was exactly what she was looking for: complete isolation, a chance to hear herself again. She told Ryan about her decision. He, as always, reacted with cold logic, advising her to take her laptop just in case something came up. That phrase was the last straw, overflowing the cup of her patience. She realized he would never understand her inner impulse. Her packing was quick, almost impulsive. No evening gowns or high heels. Just comfortable clothes, hiking boots, a few books, a notepad, and pencils. She even left her phone on silent so nothing could distract her. She wanted to feel the earth beneath her feet, the scent of pine, the sound of the wind in the treetops, not the ring of another client call or a report notification. The drive to the mountains was long, but every mile that took her away from the city filled her lungs with fresher air and her heart with a vague, yet sweet, anticipation. She watched the landscapes pass by, fields turning into hills, then into dense, dark forests. It seemed as if nature itself was breathing deeper and freer. The music from the radio, at first lively and rhythmic, gradually shifted to quiet, instrumental tunes and then faded entirely, giving way to the sounds of tires on the gravel road and the rustle of leaves. The GPS indicated that her destination was close, but the forest grew denser. The road narrowed to a dirt path, flanked by a solid wall of tall pines and spruces. The air became increasingly saturated with the scent of pine and damp earth. When she finally spotted the small wooden cabin, barely visible through the thick branches, her heart quickened. It was exactly as pictured: small, cozy, with a wide porch and a chimney that promised the warmth of a fireplace. She stopped the car, turned off the engine, and stepped out. Silence. A true, deep, ringing silence, only occasionally broken by the songs of unknown birds or the rustle of the wind. She took a deep breath, feeling the clean mountain air fill her lungs, penetrating every cell. This was exactly what she needed. Not just a break, but a complete immersion, a reset. She sensed that these woods held something more than just peace and quiet. Perhaps it would bring not only answers to her questions, but also reveal something new, something she hadn't dared to dream of. Her feminine intuition, so long suppressed, began to awaken, sending a slight, exhilarating shiver through her lower abdomen. The forest welcomed her, and she was ready to surrender to it. The first morning in the woods greeted Emily with the gentle caress of a sunbeam filtering through the cabin's shutters. She woke not to the harsh blare of an alarm clock, but to the soft chirping of birds that drifted into the room, filling it with crisp, cool air. For the first time in months, she felt truly rested. There was no dull ache in her head, no lingering sense of anxiety. Just a lightness and a strange anticipation of something new. She rose, stretching until her joints popped, and walked to the window. Beyond it lay the forest, still sleeping in the morning mist. Tall pines, majestic spruces, and lithe birches stretched their branches skyward, forming a living, breathing canopy. She inhaled deeply. The scent of pine needles, damp earth, and something indefinably wild filled her lungs. It was infinitely better than exhaust fumes and city smog. This wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a sensory awakening. Every breath was a conscious act of inhaling freedom and exhaling the stale remnants of her urban existence. The first few days unfolded in complete harmony with nature. Emily allowed herself a full digital detox. Her phone lay switched off, deep in her bag, and she felt no urge to check for missed calls or messages. She devoured books she'd long meant to read, sketched the surrounding nature in her notepad even though she'd never considered herself an artist before. Each day was a new discovery. She found herself noticing the delicate patterns on a mushroom cap, the intricate dance of light through the leaves, the subtle shifts in the forest's aroma as the day progressed. It was as if her senses, dulled by city life, were recalibrating, picking up on frequencies she'd long ignored. She spent long hours hiking, allowing herself to wander without a specific route. At first, it was a little daunting. Accustomed to clear paths and GPS navigation, she felt vulnerable in this boundless green realm. But with each step, the fear receded, giving way to exhilaration. She learned to distinguish bird calls, to spot animal tracks, to identify different types of trees and wildflowers. The forest revealed itself to her not as a collection of trees, but as a living organism breathing and pulsating with an ancient rhythm. She discovered hidden clearings where sunlight dappled through the canopy, illuminating patches of mossy earth that felt like sacred ground. She traced the winding paths of deer, imagining their quiet journey through the undergrowth, feeling a connection to the wildness that surrounded her. One afternoon, during one of these wanderings, her gaze was drawn by an unusual silvery glint through the dense tree canopy. Guided purely by instinct, she veered off the trail, pushing through tall grasses and bushes. The deeper she ventured into the woods, the more saturated the air became, infused with moisture and coolness. And then, after a few more minutes of walking, she emerged into a truly breathtaking clearing. In the center of the clearing, surrounded by large, moss-covered boulders, a waterfall cascaded noisily. The water tumbled down from a small height, crashing against the rocks and creating a myriad of droplets that sparkled with rainbow hues in the sun's rays. Below, at the base of the waterfall, a small, crystal-clear pool had formed. The place was so pristine, so untouched, that Emily felt her breath catch. It was her personal discovery, her secret sanctuary in these endless woods. It felt almost magical, as if she had stumbled into a hidden realm known only to a select few. She spent hours there, simply sitting on a warm rock, listening to the soothing roar of the water like a lullaby. She shed her clothes, letting them fall in a heap on the moss, and cautiously stepped into the water. The cold currents embraced her body, causing a slight shock, but then, as she submerged herself completely, the sensation transformed into pure bliss. She floated in the crystalline water, feeling every cell of her body awaken. It wasn't just a swim, it was a purification, both physical and mental. She felt the fatigue dissipate, the tension melt away, replaced by a lightness, a sense of liberation, and a wonderful awareness of her own femininity. She looked at her body, reflected in the water, and for the first time in years saw it not as a tool for work or an object to conceal, but as a living, sensual vessel for her soul. Her skin registered every drop. Every touch of the wind playing with her wet hair, every ripple of the cool water against her curves. Returning to the cabin, she felt an unusual hunger, a hunger not just for food, but for new experiences, for life in its purest form. She built a fire, cooked a simple yet incredibly delicious dinner, and sat by the flames for a long time, watching the flickering tongues of fire. The night sky above the forest was sprinkled with billions of stars, brighter than she had ever seen them in the city. She felt like a part of something larger, something eternal. Her inner voice, which had been silent for so long, began to whisper. It spoke of not only peace but also something that would rekindle her faded sparks, something that would restore her sense of passion, which she had believed lost. She didn't know exactly what, but she felt that the forest was preparing something special for her, something that would turn her world upside down. This anticipation sent a wave of sweet excitement through her body, promising unknown but deeply desired sensations. The following day, Emily decided to return to her secret waterfall. She packed her notepad and a thermos of herbal tea, dreaming of spending the entire day there, sketching and simply soaking in the tranquility. The sun was already high, piercing through the dense tree canopy, scattering golden patches on the forest floor. The air was filled with the intoxicating scent of warm pine and damp earth. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call felt amplified in the serene quiet, pulling her deeper into the forest's embrace. As she approached the clearing, a peculiar sound caught her attention. It wasn't the birdsong or the rustle of leaves she'd grown accustomed to. It was something akin to a quiet, deep melody drifting from somewhere beyond the boulders. The tune was so harmoniously intertwined with the forest that at first, Emily thought it might be a unique bird or the wind playing through the branches. But the sound was too pure, too human. It resonated with a primal rhythm, something ancient and untamed, much like the woods themselves. She moved cautiously, almost silently, pushing through the bushes, her heart beating a little faster. A nagging fear of the unknown mingled with an undeniable curiosity. When she emerged into the clearing, she froze. By the waterfall, sitting on one of the large, moss-covered stones, was a man. He was completely absorbed in playing a strange, unusual flute made of dark wood which looked almost as if it were a natural extension of the forest itself. His melody was hypnotic, filled with a primal, wild beauty that resonated with the sound of the cascading waterfall. It felt as though the very spirit of the Appalachians was singing through his instrument. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a lean, athletic physique visible beneath a simple linen shirt that hung loosely on him. His hair, the color of dark honey, was disheveled and lightly gleamed in the sun, long strands falling across his face, partially obscuring his features. As he lowered his head, concentrating on his playing, Emily noticed his strong cheekbones and firm jawline. There was a natural grace in his movements, a strength that didn't need to be demonstrated. He seemed to be a part of this forest, wild, free, and filled with some deep, unspoken wisdom. His presence felt as ancient and rooted as the trees around them. Finally, the melody faded. The man slowly raised his head and his gaze met Emily's. A sensation pierced through her as if her very soul had been laid bare. His eyes were the color of a deep forest lake, rich yet clear, with small sparks of light that seemed to mirror her own inner essence. There was no surprise, no embarrassment in them, just a calm, profound understanding. It was as if he had known she was there all along. "Good morning," his voice was low, velvety, as pure and deep as his music. He didn't flinch or make any sudden movements. Emily felt a blush creep up her cheeks, but she didn't avert her gaze. "Good. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you," she felt clumsy, like a child caught in the act. "You're not disturbing anything," he smiled. And his smile was warm, genuine, revealing even white teeth. "I was just finishing up. And I knew you would come." "You knew?" Emily was surprised, and a slight shiver ran through her body at his words. It sounded as if he had been waiting for her. "I felt it. The forest whispers. It always knows who comes to it and why." He patted the stone beside him, inviting her to sit. She hesitated for only a moment, then walked over and carefully sat down. Within arm's reach. He exuded a clean, fresh scent like after a rain, mingled with the aroma of earth and a faint hint of smoke. His presence was as natural as the waterfall itself, and she felt her own body relax next to him. "My name's Kai," he said, extending his hand. His touch was warm and firm, yet incredibly gentle, and a light current, like an electric shock, ran through her body. "Emily," she whispered, feeling her palm enveloped in his. "Nice to meet you, Emily. And I'm glad you found this place." His gaze flickered to the waterfall, then returned to her, and in it she read something more than simple politeness. It was an invitation, a promise, a spark that ignited long-forgotten desires within her. She felt the energy emanating from him permeate every cell of her body, awakening something deep inside. This wasn't just a meeting, it was an encounter that promised to turn her forest retreat upside down. The encounter with Kai wasn't merely an event, it was an explosion that shattered Emily's quiet solitude. He was unlike any man she had ever known. There was no typical urban rush in his movements, no feigned politeness in his words. His gaze penetrated deeply, as if seeing right through her, touching the chords of her soul whose existence she had almost forgotten. The forest, which had once been merely a backdrop for her escape, now became a silent accomplice, a quiet witness to their growing closeness. The following days they spent together. Each sunrise brought a new anticipation of their meeting. Kai showed Emily secret trails unknown to tourists, revealed the secrets of forest herbs, and told stories of ancient trees that had stood there for centuries. He knew every rustle of leaves, every whisper of the wind playing in the branches. His voice was calm, yet filled with such a passion for nature that Emily couldn't help but be captivated. He moved through the woods with an effortless grace, his bare feet seemingly sensing the earth beneath them, a stark contrast to her own, once hurried steps. They went fishing together in the clear stream that wound its way between the rocks, and his skillful hands, so easily casting the line, seemed both strong and tender. They sat by the campfire as evening descended upon the forest, and Kai recounted legends of the ancient woods, his eyes gleaming in the flickering firelight. Emily listened, mesmerized not only by his tales but also by his very presence. The crackle of the fire, the distant hoot of an owl, and the rich scent of burning wood filled the air, creating a cocoon of intimacy around them. During these walks and conversations, a tension slowly but irresistibly built between them. It wasn't just a physical attraction, though that was undoubtedly present. It was a deep, almost primal sense of kinship between their souls. Their gazes often met, lingering longer than mere politeness would dictate, and in those moments of silence, something more profound lay hidden, unspoken desires, latent passions. Emily found herself drawn to the subtle shifts in his expression, the way his lips curved when he smiled, the intensity in his eyes when he spoke of the forest. One evening, as they sat by the campfire discussing ancient forest spirits, Kai suddenly reached out and gently touched a stray lock of Emily's hair that had escaped her braid. His fingers lingered for a moment on her cheek, and a wave of goosebumps ran through her body from that light touch. Her skin, it seemed, burned in the spot he had touched. He withdrew his hand, but their eyes met, and in his gaze she read the same yearning that burned within her. "You fit so harmoniously into these woods, Emily," he whispered, his voice low and husky like the wind breaking through old trees. "As if you were always a part of it." Her heart pounded wildly. She felt her own barriers, so carefully built over years, begin to crumble under his calm yet deeply penetrating gaze. She had never felt so exposed, so desired. The urban grime that had veiled her sensuality dissolved under the influence of his presence, the forest, and her own newfound freedom. She yearned for more of his touch, for the deeper connection that she felt trembling just beneath the surface. After dinner, as the starry sky spread above them, inviting them into mystical secrets, Kai took out his flute. He began to play. The melody was different from the one she had heard the first time. It was filled with longing, hope, and a deep, unrestrained desire. The sounds of the flute enveloped her, penetrating every cell, stirring emotions she had never known before. She closed her eyes, allowing the music to guide her, feeling it resonate deep within her core, stirring a wildness she hadn't known she possessed. When the last notes dissolved into the night air, Kai rose. He walked over to her, extended his hand, and gently lifted her. They stood close, so close that she could feel the warmth of his body, his breath on her face. The scent of the forest, the earth, his own unique aroma all mingled, intoxicating her. "May I?" he whispered, his gaze drifting to her lips. Emily didn't answer with words. She merely nodded slightly, her eyes half closed with anticipation. He slowly, almost unhurriedly, leaned in. His lips brushed hers. It was a soft, tender touch like the first ray of sun breaking through the leaves. But this tenderness quickly grew into something more. His kiss deepened, became more passionate, demanding a response. Emily reciprocated, surrendering to this torrent of emotions that surged through her. Her hands wrapped around his neck, pulling him closer, feeling the strength of his shoulders, the warmth of his skin. She felt his tongue gently trace her lips, inviting her to dance. She answered him, and the kiss became a vortex, drawing them both into a whirlwind of desire. This was not just a merging of lips. It was a fusion of souls, a silent promise of something much larger that awaited them that night. She felt her body burning with desire, every nerve taut, awaiting his touches. The forest, it seemed, held its breath, observing their rapprochement, preparing to witness their passion. Their lips parted only long enough to catch a breath. Kai's gaze was filled with such profound desire that Emily felt her own heart somersaulting again and again. The forest around them was alive with nocturnal sounds, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft hum of insects, but for her, only he existed. And that trembling, sweet sensation that spread through her entire body. He reached out, and his fingers, so strong yet incredibly gentle, glided along her cheek, then tangled in her hair. He kissed her again, this time more insistently, demanding a response, and Emily surrendered to the kiss completely, letting her body burn under his touch. Her fingers intertwined in his hair, pulling him closer, wanting no space between them. "Let's go," he whispered, breaking away from her lips, his voice husky with desire. He took her hand, and they walked along the path leading to her cabin. The night was warm, and the starry sky shone so brightly that even the forest shadows seemed inviting, not frightening. Each step they took was filled with anticipation, a tension that grew with every passing second. Her skin felt the coolness of the night air and the warmth of his palm clasping hers. The scent of pine and earth mingled with his own unique, primal aroma, intoxicating her senses. As they entered the cabin, moonlight streamed through the windows, casting a soft, silvery glow. Emily felt her body tremble, but it was a tremor not of fear, but of pure, undisguised desire. She turned to face him, and their gazes met. In his eyes, there was not only passion but also tenderness, respect, understanding. "You're incredible," he whispered, and his words were not just a compliment but a recognition of her very essence. He slowly, tenderly began to unbutton her light shirt. Each movement was deliberate, sensual, sending shivers down her spine. As the shirt slipped from her shoulders to the floor, his gaze swept over her collarbones, her breasts, and she felt her nipples harden with anticipation. She had never felt so desired, so exposed before. She reached out to his shirt, her fingers trembling as she unbuttoned it, revealing his muscular chest. With their clothes discarded on the floor, they stood facing each other in the soft moonlight. Her gaze traced the contours of his body, athletic, powerful, yet without excessive bulk. His skin was lightly tanned and marked with faint traces of his forest adventures, small scratches that only added to his allure. She felt her own body responding to his proximity, every nerve taut, awaiting his touches. He lifted her into his arms, and Emily instinctively wrapped her legs around his hips, pressing her entire body against his. He carried her to the bed by the large window, which offered a view of the nocturnal forest. They sank onto the soft blankets, and his lips found hers again. The kisses grew deeper, hotter, and his hands explored every curve of her body, eliciting shivers of delight. He moved lower, his lips brushing her neck, her collarbones gently gliding over her breasts. She gasped with pleasure, feeling every cell of her body respond to his touch. His tongue gently traced her nipple, and a powerful electric current surged through her body, making her arch in sweet torment. She moaned his name, her fingers clutching his hair. Their breathing became more rapid, merging into a single rhythm. He slowly moved downwards, his touches growing more intense, and her own body burned with desire. When he reached the most intimate parts of her, Emily felt her breath hitch. His lips, his tongue, his gentle yet insistent touches evoked waves of pleasure she had never felt before. She arched beneath him, surrendering to the flow, her body entirely at his command. They lay intertwined, their breaths slowly calming. Moonlight flooded the room, and from the window came the tranquil sounds of the forest. Emily felt his warmth beside her, his hand gently stroking her hair. This was more than just pleasure, it was healing, liberation. She had never thought she could feel anything like this. The forest, it seemed, embraced them both as a lover embraces their beloved, witnessing their deep, primal intimacy. She drifted off to sleep in his arms, feeling complete, utterly harmonious. Dawn crept through the cabin's large windows, painting the walls with soft, golden patterns. Emily woke to a sensation of warmth and utter security. She lay, pressed close to Kai, his arm draped over her waist, his breath ghosting against her hair. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she felt no anxiety, no lingering internal weight. Only a deep, calm peace mingled with the exquisite aftertaste of passion. She carefully lifted her head to look at him. He was sleeping, his face relaxed, devoid of the forest's mysterious allure that had first drawn her in. He was simply a man who had gifted her unforgettable sensations. She felt her heart swell with tenderness, as pure and untouched as the morning forest outside the window. This tenderness was unlike any feeling she'd known before. It wasn't burdened by expectations or calculations as her relationships in the city had been. It was something primal, deep, that had sprouted from the very essence of her being. Kai stirred and slowly opened his eyes. His gaze met hers, and a slow, soft smile spread across his lips. "Good morning," he whispered, his voice husky from sleep, yet filled with such warmth that Emily felt shivers run through her body. "Good morning," she replied, her voice unexpectedly hoarse. He held her tighter, and they lay for a while in silence, savoring the morning stillness. Outside the window, the forest was beginning to awaken, filling with birdsong and the rustle of the morning breeze. "How are you feeling?" Kai asked, his fingers gently stroking her back. Emily sighed, feeling completely relaxed. "Incredible. Like I've woken up after a very long sleep." He smiled, his gaze sweeping over her face. "I knew the forest would heal you. It always does." Their morning was slow and sensual. They were in no hurry to get up, savoring every touch, every kiss. He made her herbal tea and brought it to bed, where they drank it together, gazing at the forest outside the window. Their conversations were light, unforced, yet filled with sincerity. He spoke of his life in the woods, of its inhabitants, of ancient traditions passed down through generations. Emily listened, captivated by his stories, feeling her own worldview expand. He told her about the wisdom of the ancient trees, the flow of the hidden springs, and the subtle language of the wind. She absorbed every word, feeling a part of something timeless. But sooner or later, the shadows of reality always appeared on the horizon. Do you have to leave?" Emily felt her heart clench at the words. She didn't want this magic to end. Kai sighed. "Yes, my responsibilities call. I can't always be here in the woods, but I always come back." He looked at her, and his gaze was deeply thoughtful. "And you? Will you go back to your city?" Emily looked away, her thoughts swirling. New York, Ryan, work. All of it seemed so distant, almost unreal after these days spent in the woods with Kai. She felt how profoundly she had changed. She had reconnected with herself as a woman, alive, sensual, full of desires. This night, this encounter with Kai, had unearthed depths within her she hadn't even suspected. She was no longer just a tired architect. but a woman who had found her true essence amidst the wild beauty of nature. "I don't know," she answered honestly, looking at his profile. "I don't know if I can go back to what was before. I'm not the same person." He reached out and took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "The forest changes people. It reveals what was hidden within them. You found yourself, Emily. Don't forget that." Their farewell was tender, yet filled with unspoken promises. He kissed her goodbye, a long, deep kiss that left her heart with a sweet ache. His hands cupped her face, gently touching as if he wanted to memorize every feature. When he released her, Emily felt a chill run through her body. He picked up his flute, which had lain on the table all this time, and after one last penetrating look, he walked out of the cabin. She watched him disappear among the trees, his figure dissolving into the forest shadows like a mirage. He left as quietly as he had arrived, leaving behind only an unforgettable aftertaste. Emily remained alone, but no longer felt lonely. She felt full, transformed. She walked to the window and looked out at the forest. It was the same as before, but her perspective had shifted. She now saw it not merely as a place of rest, but as the cradle of her rebirth. A strength had awakened within her, a sensuality, a confidence she hadn't even known she possessed. The encounter with Kai wasn't just an adventure, it was a catalyst that had initiated irreversible changes in her soul. She realized she would never be the old Emily again. The forest had given her not only passion but a new understanding of herself, her desires, and her place in this world. The drive back was utterly different. The same gravel path leading from the forest no longer seemed unknown or daunting. Every turn evoked recent memories of the encounter that had changed everything. As Emily finally merged onto the highway and headed towards the city, the heavy burden she had carried on her way here was gone. Instead, her heart pulsed with a strange sense of fullness, a mix of wistfulness for what she'd left behind and an unquenchable desire to live life anew. New York City greeted her with its familiar noise and bustle. The concrete canyons of buildings, the incessant honking of cars, the countless faces rushing past, all seemed alien, artificial after the harmony of the Appalachian woods. She walked into her apartment, and her own living space, once so comforting, now felt cold and soulless. She unpacked her belongings, and every item reminded her of the forest, the faint scent of pine that still clung to her clothes, the bits of earth that shook from her hiking boots, the dried wildflower she'd found near the waterfall. It was as if the city's harsh edges chafed against the soft, awakened parts of her soul. The first few days back in the city were a test. Ryan, as expected, didn't grasp her transformation. He asked if she was rested and, without waiting for a detailed answer, immediately launched into discussions about their shared plans and work. His words seemed hollow, his touches foreign. When he tried to kiss her, Emily felt an internal recoil. It was a kiss devoid of any passion, any true connection. She realized she couldn't continue living like this. Her sensuality, awakened by Kai in the forest, now demanded freedom and genuine emotion. "Emily, you've been so distant lately," Ryan remarked one evening as they sat at dinner. His tone was calm, but a hint of irritation laced his voice. "What's going on with you? You came back completely different." She met his gaze, her eyes showing weariness and pain. "I've changed, Ryan. I don't know if I can be the Emily you knew." He merely shrugged. "There's nothing wrong with change, but have you forgotten our plans? Everything we've built?" Their conversation quickly escalated into an argument, not loud, but quiet and, therefore, even more painful. Emily realized they were speaking different languages. He only saw her outward shell, her social status, her role in his life. He didn't see the new Emily who had blossomed in the heart of the woods, the woman who had rediscovered her sensuality and inner freedom. She understood that the rift between them had become a chasm, and the void on the other side no longer frightened her. She knew, with a certainty that hummed in her veins, that she could no longer force herself into a life that no longer fit. Nights brought memories of the forest that refused to leave her. Not just images, but entire sensations, the scent of damp earth after rain. The whisper of the wind in the ancient treetops, the warmth of the campfire that warmed not just her body, but her soul. And, of course, Kai. His deep gaze, his gentle yet commanding touches, his music that seemed to be an extension of the forest's breath. She remembered every moment of their night, every touch, every moan. Her body instinctively reacted to these memories, sending sweet shivers and a longing deep within. She found herself unconsciously reaching for the places on her body where he had touched her, as if trying to recapture the echo of his touch. 2 weeks later, as she sat at her desk, staring at the soulless monitor screen, a wave of absolute emptiness suddenly pierced her. It was physically painful. She felt her lungs constrict as if she couldn't breathe. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, and the words were spoken not to anyone else but to herself. It was a decision. An unchangeable, final decision. That same day she wrote her resignation letter. Without hesitation, without regret. She knew it was crazy, but she felt it was the only path to salvation. She explained to Ryan that they needed to separate, and though it was difficult, she felt a profound sense of relief. She sold most of her belongings, keeping only the essentials, what she could take with her on a journey. She felt old chains falling away and her soul becoming free once more. She bought a ticket. One way. To the very region where her forest cabin was located. This time, she wasn't seeking rest or an escape. She was seeking a return. A return to herself, to her true nature, and perhaps to the one who had helped her find it. She knew the path wouldn't be easy, but her heart was filled with fierce determination. She wasn't going to hide from her desires anymore. She was ready for whatever awaited her there, deep in the heart of the wild, living forest. The steel and glass facade of New York City, which had welcomed Emily back, now felt less like home and more like a suffocating cage. Each day spent amidst the urban sprawl was a jarring discord. She observed the faces of the people around her, weary, preoccupied, hurried, and recognized her former self. But now, after the profound awakening in the Appalachian woods, she felt like an alien among them. The very air in the city seemed heavy, thick with exhaust fumes and suppressed emotions, a stark contrast to the crisp, pine-scented breath of the mountains. Her meticulously decorated apartment, once a serene sanctuary after a long workday, now felt hollow, devoid of any genuine vibrancy. Every object, from her sleek office gadgets to the trendy, yet uncomfortable, designer vase, screamed of a world she was desperately trying to abandon. She attempted to fall back into her familiar routine, morning runs on the treadmill, endless Zoom calls, quick lunches at downtown cafes with colleagues rehashing the same old projects. But all of it felt utterly meaningless. Her thoughts relentlessly drifted back to the waterfall, to the profound quiet of the forest, to the comforting warmth of Kai's hand. The disparity was most acutely felt in her relationship with Ryan. His efforts to steer their life back into its accustomed groove, his pragmatic discussions about future plans and stability struck her as pointless and even offensive. Every one of his touches, once merely a habit, now elicited an internal stiffness, a subtle recoiling. She felt her body, which had flared so brightly in the woods, trying to shrivel and hide again. "Emily, you've been so distant lately," Ryan commented one evening during another one of their predictable dinners. His tone was even, but a hint of exasperation underscored his words. "What's going on with you? You came back completely different." She met his gaze, her eyes heavy with weariness and a nascent pain. "I have changed, Ryan. I don't know if I can be the Emily you knew anymore." He simply shrugged, a gesture that spoke volumes about his lack of understanding. "There's nothing wrong with change, but have you forgotten about our plans? Everything we've built together." Their conversation quickly escalated into an argument, not a shouting match, but a calm, cutting exchange that was, in its own way, far more devastating. Emily realized they were speaking entirely different languages. He saw only her superficial shell, her social standing, her role in his life. He completely missed the blossoming woman who had emerged from the forest, the one who had rediscovered her raw sensuality and inner freedom. She understood, with chilling clarity, that the chasm between them had become an unbridgeable gulf, and the void on the other side no longer terrified her. In fact, it beckoned with the promise of something authentic. Nights became a tumultuous landscape of memories from the forest that relentlessly pursued her. These weren't just fleeting images, but vivid, encompassing sensations, the earthy scent of damp soil after rain, the soft whisper of the wind through the ancient tree canopy. The primal warmth of the campfire that had warmed not only her skin but her very soul. And, of course, Kai. His deep, knowing gaze, his gentle yet authoritative touches, his flute music that seemed to be an extension of the forest's own breathing. She replayed every moment of their night, every touch, every soft moan. Her body instinctively reacted to these recollections, sending sweet shivers and a deep, aching desire. She often found her hand unconsciously reaching for the places on her body where he had touched her, as if trying to recapture the lingering echo of his presence. The longing was a physical ache, a craving for the wild liberation she had tasted. About 2 weeks later, as she sat hunched over her sterile desk, staring at the soulless glow of her monitor, a wave of absolute emptiness suddenly pierced her. It was a visceral, painful sensation. She felt her lungs constrict as if she couldn't draw a full breath. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, the words a raw, guttural confession not to anyone else but to herself. It was a decision. An unchangeable, final decision that resonated deep in her bones. That same day, she walked into her boss's office and tendered her resignation. Without hesitation, without a single pang of regret. She knew it sounded insane to anyone else, but she felt with unwavering conviction that it was the only path to saving herself. She then explained to Ryan that they needed to separate, and while it was undeniably difficult to utter the words, she felt an immense sense of relief. She sold off most of her possessions, keeping only the absolute essentials, what could fit into a few bags, and accompany her on a journey. She felt old chains falling away, clattering to the ground, and her soul, for the first time in years, was truly free. She booked a one-way ticket to the very region where her forest cabin was nestled. This time, she wasn't seeking respite or merely an escape. She was actively seeking a return. A return to herself, to her authentic nature, and perhaps to the one who had helped her rediscover it. She knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but her heart was brimming with a fierce, resolute determination. She was no longer going to shy away from her deepest desires. She was ready for whatever awaited her there, deep in the heart of the wild, untamed Appalachian forest. This time, her packing was utterly different. There was no hurried anxiety, no lingering doubts. Her suitcase was lighter, but it was filled not just with clothes, but with a profound sense of hope. Emily had consciously chosen only the essentials: comfortable, unrestricting clothing, hiking boots that remembered the feel of forest trails, and her notepad, already filled with sketches of the waterfall and the tranquil woodland scenes. And then there was the small, dried wildflower she'd found in the clearing near the waterfall during her first trip. She cherished it like a talisman, a quiet reminder that the Appalachian wilderness was waiting for her. Behind the wheel of her car, pulling away from the city's concrete embrace, she felt not merely relief, but a true sense of flight. Every mile that distanced her from the urban clamor filled her lungs with crisper air and her heart with an undeniable certainty that she was making the right choice. This time, she wasn't running from something. She was driving to something. To herself. To the forest. To him. The journey, which had once seemed long and monotonous, was now imbued with a special significance. Emily noticed every detail: the subtle shifts in the greens of the sprawling fields, the way the gentle hills gradually gave way to dense, sprawling forest massifs. She rolled down the window, letting the wind play with her hair, and inhaled the intoxicating scent of distant mountains and pine trees. The music on the radio felt superfluous, and she turned it off, opting instead for the quiet symphony of the road itself, the hum of tires on asphalt, the faint drone of the engine, and the increasingly distinct bird song as she neared the woods. Her thoughts were consumed by memories of Kai. She recalled his deep, knowing gaze, his calm yet charismatic smile, the warmth of his hands. She replayed every one of his words in her mind, every shared moment. Would he be there? Would he remember her with the same vividness? These questions sent a delicate shiver through her, a mixture of exhilaration and sweet anticipation. She pictured their reunion, the words they might exchange, the way his touch would ignite a familiar fire on her skin, rekindling what had so brightly flared before. Her body already felt that familiar pull, a soft pulsing deep within her, promising new, even deeper discoveries. As the GPS announced her nearing destination, Emily felt her heart pound furiously. The familiar dirt road, flanked by a solid wall of towering pines, once again appeared before her. The air grew thick, saturated with the scent of damp earth, pine needles, and a wild, elusive aroma unique to this particular forest. She slowly navigated the familiar curves, and then, through the dense tree canopy, her cabin came into view. It stood as solitary, as inviting as before, as if it had been patiently awaiting her return. Emily turned off the engine and stepped out of the car. All around her reigned an absolute silence, broken only by the occasional whisper of the wind through the treetops. She took a deep breath, and it was like coming home after a long journey. She felt her body relax, her soul filling with a profound sense of peace. The forest embraced her with its sounds and scents, as if welcoming her back. She walked towards the cabin's porch, her gaze sweeping over the familiar details, the carved railings, the old wooden door. Nothing here had changed externally. But she had. She was no longer the weary city woman, but a woman who had found her strength, her sensuality, her true essence. She felt that the forest and Kai were waiting for her. This wasn't just a premonition, it was a deep, almost mystical knowing. She took a step towards the door, ready for whatever this new encounter, this new chapter in her life, would bring. Her journey was beginning anew, right here, in the heart of the wild, living woods. After leaving her bags in the cabin, Emily wasted no time. She knew exactly where to go. Her feet instinctively carried her along the familiar path leading to the waterfall. Every step was filled with a potent mix of hope and trembling excitement. Would he be there? Would he remember her with the same intensity? Emily's heart hammered against her ribs, echoing the rhythm of her own new, vibrant life. The forest greeted her with its familiar rustle of leaves and bird song, but this time she felt it differently, like a living accomplice, silently observing her quest. She walked, listening intently to every sound, peering into every shadow. Her senses were sharpened as if she herself had become a part of this wild kingdom. She felt an almost palpable sense of his presence, a faint scent of wood smoke, a distant echo of a flute melody vibrating in the air, or simply an intuitive knowing that he was nearby. It was almost like a game of hide and seek, but infinitely more intimate, infused with a palpable erotic undertone. Each step was a step towards something inevitable, something that transcended a mere meeting. The very air hummed with a magnetic pull, guiding her deeper into the embrace of the woods. As she drew closer to the clearing where the waterfall cascaded, her breath hitched. On the very stone where they had first met lay his flute. The dark wood, polished by the touch of his fingers, gleamed in the sunlight. The flute wasn't just an instrument, it was a sign, a promise, a confirmation that he had been there, that he was, perhaps, waiting. Emily felt a hot blush creep up her cheeks and a wave of sweet tremors coursed through her body. He knew. He knew she would return. She cautiously approached the flute, her fingers almost brushing the instrument, but she held back. Instead, her gaze swept across the clearing, searching for him. Silence. Only the roar of the waterfall and the distant calls of birds. And then she saw him. He stood by the waterfall's edge, his back to her, his lean figure almost blending with the trees. He was barefoot, clad in simple, loose linen pants, and his back, powerful and sculpted, was bare. Her gaze lingered on the curve of his muscles, on the smooth skin that shimmered with the waterfall's spray. He seemed lost in thought, mesmerized by the falling water. He was a creature of this place, embodying its primal strength and quiet solitude. Emily slowly, almost soundlessly, took a few steps forward. Her heart pounded in her chest. She felt her own body responding to his proximity, every nerve taut, ready for the reunion. Finally, she stopped just a few feet behind him. "Kai!" Her voice emerged as a soft whisper, dissolving into the roar of the water. He slowly turned. His eyes, deep as forest lakes, met hers. There was no surprise, no astonishment in them, only a profound, almost bottomless understanding. And then, a smile. A smile that made her heart melt. That smile was an invitation, a promise that spoke more than 1,000 words ever could. "I knew you would come, Emily." His voice was low and velvety as it had been before, but now infused with an even greater tenderness, almost the tenderness of a lover. The forest always returns what belongs to it. He took a step towards her, and Emily didn't hesitate. She rushed into his arms, feeling his strong hands wrap around her waist, pulling her against his bare body. It was a homecoming, a return to herself. Her fingers tangled in his hair, her lips found his. Their kiss was long, deep, filled with everything they couldn't express in words, longing, hope, the passion they had both tried to suppress. It was the kiss of two souls who had found each other in the wild heart of nature. His tongue gently traced hers, and she responded with the same raw, undisguised passion, feeling her body ignite once more with desire. He broke away from her, his eyes blazing. "I missed you so much, Emily. Your light. Your warmth." Her breath was ragged, her body trembling. "And I, Kai. I couldn't stay there without this. Without you." His gaze flickered to the flute lying on the stone, then returned to her, and in it she read a promise. A promise that this encounter was not an end, but merely a new beginning to their story. And this time she knew it wouldn't be temporary. She was ready to stay, fully surrendering herself to these woods and to him who was its inseparable part. This time their reunion wasn't just a spark, it was an inferno. The flame that had ignited between them during Emily's first visit to the Appalachian woods now roared with a new, unrestrained intensity. Leaving the cabin behind, they took their time, moving as one, their hands intertwined, their gazes locked. The forest, which had witnessed their initial connection, now seemed to welcome their reunion, rustling its leaves as if in approval of two kindred spirits who had found each other once more. Kai led Emily deeper into the woods, to places she hadn't seen before. He showed her ancient oaks, their roots deeply embedded in the earth-like arteries nourishing the forest's heart. They discovered a hidden grotto, its walls covered in velvety moss, where a subterranean spring burbled from its depths. He recounted ancient legends of forest spirits, of the powerful energy flowing through all living things. Emily listened, mesmerized, feeling her own perception of the world expand. There was no pretense of mysticism in his words, but a profound, almost primal understanding of humanity's connection to nature. Their conversations now delved into even deeper, more intimate territories. Emily spoke to Kai about her fears, about the gnawing emptiness she'd felt in the city, about her drastic decision to abandon everything in search of herself. He listened with such unwavering attention, such profound understanding, that she felt completely accepted, utterly without judgment. In turn, Kai revealed more about his life in the woods. He wasn't a recluse, but a man who had consciously chosen a life in harmony with nature, far from the urban chaos. He explained that his flute wasn't merely an instrument, it was a way for him to communicate with the forest, to channel its energy. He played for her, and her soul resonated with every note, feeling the ancient stories woven into the melodies. The physical intimacy between them grew even more intense, imbued with a newfound tenderness and a profound sense of belonging. They spent another night by the waterfall beneath the canopy of a star-dusted sky. This time, their passion wasn't just an explosion, it was a slow, sensual dance. He touched her skin with such exquisite gentleness that Emily felt every cell of her being respond to his touch. Her body, completely liberated from urban inhibitions, surrendered to him without reservation. The next morning, as the sun once again bathed the clearing in its golden light, they lay intertwined, their gazes filled with tenderness and a deep, unspoken understanding. This wasn't merely a night of passion, it was a profound confirmation of their bond. Emily felt with absolute certainty that she had found her place. Not in the bustling city, not in a monotonous routine, but here, in the heart of the Appalachian wilderness, beside Kai. "Will you stay?" he whispered, his fingers gently stroking her hair. There was no demand in his voice, only a deep, hopeful question. Emily lifted her head and looked into his eyes. In them she saw not only love but also the reflection of her own soul, clear and unburdened. She realized that all her searching, all her transformative changes had led her precisely to this moment. Her forest adventure had blossomed into her new life. "Yes," she replied, and in her voice resonated not only tenderness but also firm resolve. "Forever." The forest seemed to answer her with a soft rustle of leaves as if approving her choice. She was no longer a fugitive from urban life, she was a woman who had found her home, her passion, and her true essence amidst the wild, free wilderness beside the man who understood her without words. Their story was only just beginning.